In this video, we'll be revealing the fastest way for you to gain muscle. The video will be broken up into 3 different categories that you can optimize. First being the training itself, second being any lifestyle changes you can make, and third being how to optimize your testosterone naturally. If you optimize these 3 things, you'll be able to gain the most amount of muscle in the least amount of time. Just before we get started, my name's Charlie. I'm a bodybuilder, BJJ fighter, level 3 personal trainer with over 7 years of experience in the fitness industry and have helped many clients gain muscle, build strength and lose weight. If you're interested in online coaching, just check the link in the description. So starting with the first category of the weight training, we're going to start off by discussing how many times you should go to the gym or train each week. So it doesn't actually matter, to be honest, how many days per week that you train. What matters more is how many times per week each muscle group is trained. So you could go to the gym like every day, but if you're doing like a bro split, for example, where you're doing like chest one day, back another day, arms another day, maybe another day for like abs, and then another day for like legs, another day for shoulders. You could be going to the gym like 6 or 7 days a week, but only training each muscle group once per week. If you want to try instead to select a split that will allow you to train each muscle group 2 times a week, so that's going to depend on how many times that you can come into the gym. If you can only come in like twice a week, I recommend doing 2 full body sessions. If you can come in a bit more often, like 4 times a week, you could do like an upper lower split. So yeah, just ensuring that your split allows you to train each muscle group twice per week. You also want to make sure that them sessions are split out enough throughout the week. So obviously you wouldn't want to train like upper body one day and then upper body again like the day or 2 after. You want to allow sort of 2 days between each muscle group to allow it to actually like recover before the next session. Just before we move on to the next few tips, I'd like to make you aware of a free email campaign. What it is 31 fitness tips across 31 days. But each of those tips is going to massively transform your fitness progress. It's going to help you with literally everything from the weight training itself, cardio, recovery, mindset, motivation, supplements, eating, consistency, loads of different tips in your training to make this year in fitness your best year so far. Again, that's 100% free. It'll be linked in the description, so go check it out. So now we've gone over like the splits and how often you should train. We're going to be going over the most important principle for when you're actually weight training, which is going to be called progressive overload. So essentially what that means is just making each session a little bit harder than the previous one. So you can do that in 4 different ways. First is going to be to decrease your rest. Second is going to be to increase your reps. Third is going to be to increase how many sets you're doing. And fourth is going to be to increase how much weight you're lifting. So we're going to quickly rank each of those 4 from worst to best. So in last place is going to be decreasing your rest. The reason that you don't want to rely too much on this, it's only really going to be beneficial if you're training for endurance. As with endurance, you want to stick to like the longer sets with these shorter rest periods. But if you were to rest too little between each set when you're trying to train for muscle growth, what that would mean is that you wouldn't be able to lift as much weight in your next set. And therefore, the stimulus to your muscles to actually grow wouldn't be as good. So you want to try and allow yourself to rest like at least a minute, preferably closer to like 1.5 to 2 minutes, to ensure that you're actually recovered enough and can lift a significant amount of weight in the next set. And then in third place is going to be increasing how many reps you're doing. So this is a very good way of increasing how much volume you're doing and to provide a greater stimulus to your muscles to grow. But it also does run into that problem that we mentioned with the previous one. And if you do it too much, it can lead to a more like endurance style of training, which will be focusing more on like your type 1 muscle fibers, which aren't as good as actually growing than the type 2 fibers. The type 2 fibers will be worked a little bit more towards like the heavier side of training. Anything from around like 12 reps and less, will be working them a lot more. Second place is going to be increasing how many sets you're doing. It's a really good way to add a lot of volume to your training. You wouldn't want to do it too much. As if, for example, you're doing like 3 sets of 10. If you were to add another set, and that's an extra whole 10 reps that you're adding on, you want to use this quite sparingly, but it is still a good way to increase how much volume you're doing. And then the best way is going to be to increase how much weight you're doing, as this will provide like a really good stimulus for your muscles to actually keep growing and avoid you hitting a plateau. It can also be done pretty much indefinitely. You can just keep increasing weight slightly each session. But what you wouldn't want to do is increase weight so much that your reps start to drop below around 6 reps. If the reps are too low, it will be good for gaining strength, but you won't be getting as much volume and as much time under tension with each set. So what you want to do is stick to preferably around like 8 to 12 reps. So starting with like 8 reps of let's say 20 kgs and then increasing the reps, maybe 1 or 2 each session. And when you can do it comfortably for around 12 reps, increase the weight slightly, maybe to like 22.5, drop back down to 8 reps and then continue that process. So increasing reps till you can do about 12, and slightly increasing the weight while dropping the reps back down. Okay, and then to wrap up the actual training side of it, we're going to be covering 2 principles that you should follow pretty much all cases when you're training. First, it's going to be to try and train the muscle that you're working in more of a stretched position and apply tension to it when it's in that stretched position. So to put a muscle in a stretched position, you want to pretty much do like the opposite of its function. To say for your triceps, for example, their main function is to extend your arm. You're also slightly involved in bringing your arm back behind you. So to put the greatest stretch on them, you want to try and do exercises where your elbow is going to be going into a really bent position and also where your elbow is above you slightly, as this will place the most stretch on your triceps in this case, which can be very beneficial when you're trying to grow them. And then second principle is going to be intensity. What I mean by intensity is essentially how close to failure the set was. So if you feel like you could have only done maybe 1 or 2 more, and that would have been like a really intense set. If you go to the point where you literally cannot do any more reps, that would be very intense. If you're leaving sort of like maybe 3 or 4 reps in the tank when you're training, that would be like a moderately intense set. Anything more than that would probably be too easy and will just be like a warm-up set. So when you're starting off, you want to actually keep the intensity quite low. Just focus on like getting enough volume in, learning the actual technique. Once you've been training for like 6 months, you want to start to increase the intensity from there. So doing sets until they get quite uncomfortable and then stopping them there. Once you've been training for a little bit longer and you're a bit more advanced, you can start taking some sets very close to failure, if not to failure, and in some cases beyond failure. So you want to make sure that your intensity is at the right level, depending on like where you are in your fitness journey. So that's going to conclude everything to do with any weight training. Second, we're going to be going over all the lifestyle changes that you can make. First, we're going to cover the most important thing for your recovery, which is going to be your sleep. So in order to get the best sleep possible, we're going to make sure you're optimizing 3 things, which are the quality of your sleep, the quantity, and as well as the consistency. So we're going to quickly go over them 3 now. So to get the best quality sleep, you want to make sure you're sleeping in a room that's quite like cold, dark, quiet, when there aren't going to be like any loud noises, any lights or anything like that, as this will allow you to get into more of like a deep sleep and stay asleep throughout the night and avoid you like waking up throughout the night. Second is going to be the quantity of your sleep. You're going to want to try and dedicate a lot of time to sleep, but also recognize that the time you spend in bed is not the same as your time actually asleep, as obviously it does take you a while to actually fall asleep and you might wake up a bit during the night. The general recommendation is to try and sleep for around 7 to 9 hours per night. Obviously this does vary a lot person to person, but you want to try and make sure you're sleeping enough so that when you wake up, you feel like quite energized, you don't feel like you're tired or want to go back to bed at all. And then last is going to be the consistency of your sleep. So you want to make sure you're getting in like a good routine and getting to sleep consistently and waking up consistently in very similar times throughout the week. As if you were to stay like consistent, let's say 5 days throughout the week, and on the weekend you're not getting enough sleep, what would happen is that you'd accumulate sleep debt, which would mean that you can't just go back to sleep in your normal amount. You'd actually have to sleep a little bit more to compensate for your reduced sleep on that weekend. Yeah, you want to make sure you're having like a proper night routine and try and consciously go to bed around sort of the same time each night, preferably within like a half an hour window, and that should be fine, so that you're getting good sleep consistently throughout the week. So next we're going to be going over protein. General rule is you want to try and get close to around 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So if you weigh like 140 pounds, you're going to be getting close to like 140 grams of protein. If you only know your weight in kilos, just times it by 2 and that will still give you a general good rule for how much protein you should get in to optimize your muscle growth. You can actually gain muscle on a lot less than that. You can even gain it on like half a gram of protein per pound of body weight. But if you really want to optimize your muscle growth, try and stick to those higher ends of the ranges, like around 1 gram per pound of body weight as a general rule. And also when you are having that protein and when you are eating, best case scenario is that your food will be split up across around like 4 meals per day. So if you were to just have 1 meal per day, obviously you can still gain muscle doing it that way, but you'll only have 1 opportunity throughout that day for muscle protein synthesis to occur. If you were to increase that to 2 meals, you will see a significant increase in how much muscle that you'll be gaining. Bumping up to 3, you will gain like a little bit more. 4, you'll gain like a tiny bit more. Anything beyond that is pretty much insignificant. So yeah, the sweet spot is around 3, but if you can 4 times eating per day, make sure each of those meals / snacks have protein in them. Secondly, in terms of supplements, I'll say the best 2 once you've got like your protein and your diet sorted are going to be creatine and pre-workout. So for creatine, you're just going to have it as a scoop. You can have around 1 scoop per day, which is going to be around 5 grams each day. If you ever forget a day, you can just have 1 extra scoop the next day to make up for it. It will help you a lot with like gaining muscle, gaining strength. It's one of the most researched supplements out there, and it's really cheap as well. So yeah, make sure you're having creatine. And then the second supplement is going to be pre-workout. The main ingredient that you want to have in your pre-workout is caffeine, which obviously you can get from like energy drinks and coffee as well. What this will do is it will just give you a little bit of extra energy when you're training. It will allow you to like lift a little bit more weight, do for like a few more reps, just give you like a little bit more energy when you are actually lifting. And then lastly is going to be how to structure your other training around your weight training. So if you were to do like running or cardio as well, you want to make sure that you're doing the cardio either on a separate day to the weights, or if you have to do them on the same day, make sure you're doing the weights first and then the cardio second. And if you were to do stretching as well, you want to do stretching like at the end of all of that. So if you were to do stretching, cardio and weights all in the same day, you start off with the weights. Obviously you'd warm up first, but start off with the weights, and then go into the cardio, and then from there finish up with the stretching. And then to wrap up the video, we're going to be listing off a few tips to help you maximize your testosterone. First tip is something we've already covered a little bit, but it's going to be your sleep. Sleep is going to be one of the best ways that you can optimize your testosterone naturally. So doing pretty much everything that we mentioned, optimizing the quality, quantity, and consistency of your sleep. Then second bit for testosterone is going to be to lower your stress. So stress releases cortisol, which is a catabolic hormone, meaning it's bad for muscle growth, and too much stress can also decrease your testosterone. So you want to make sure you're doing things like throughout the day to help you de-stress and avoid getting too stressed. So things like meditating, gratitude journaling, maybe like spending time in nature, doing anything that really like relaxes you will help you to like decrease how much stress you're having, decrease all the cortisol, and help you to optimize your testosterone. So yeah, make sure you're doing things that are nice and relaxing throughout the day. Next tip is going to be to avoid or at least minimize how much alcohol you're having. So alcohol has pretty much no positive effects to your body, has loads of negative ones on the other hand for like muscle growth. It will also decrease your testosterone. So if you don't drink, that's perfectly fine. You can just skip this tip. But if you do have a bit too much alcohol, what you want to do is just slightly reduce it like week to week. Say for example, you were to have like 5 drinks on average each week. You could just reduce that to maybe like 4, having like 4 alcoholic ones, and then having something that's non-alcoholic to replace the 5th one, and then staying consistent with that. Once you're comfortable with having 4, you can then reduce that to 3. Keep repeating that, so getting consistent with 3, reducing it to 2. Then before you know it, you'll be having pretty much no alcohol. Things like meditating as well can also help with this, as it will help you to be like more mindful and present throughout the day, which can help you massively with like decision making and improving your discipline and willpower. And while we're on the topic of testosterone, things like ashwagandha can help a little bit to help you boost your testosterone. If you also don't really get much sunlight throughout the day, you may want to supplement with vitamin D3, and that's going to conclude the fastest way for you to get jacked. Just a reminder of the things we spoke about earlier with the online coaching as well as that free email campaign. That will all be linked in the description, so make sure to check that out. If you'd like to see like a follow along tricep workout, it will just be linked here, so make sure to check that out as well, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.